Oop oop, Graham. Cultural appropriation.
It's just a relaxed monkey.
As a token brown
It could
guy.
be a monkey from the Indian subcontinent.
That's true. My people's monkeys.
Yes.
Did you know that giraffes can't swim?
I did not know that, but I do know that they can last longer without water than camels. Now I've got like some sort of Far Side cartoon with swimming.
So, dear listener, this is the
giraffes.
third episode we've recorded in a row, and we're into our third glass of scotch. It's getting out of control. So giraffes can't swim,
Right.
but porcupines can float.
Well, giraffes don't need to swim because they can always just stick their heads above the water, right? They're
Do
fine.
porcupines need to float?
Yeah. If someone kicks a porcupine in the water, he hopes it would float. Okay, is it because its quills are so light?
Yes, they're hollow. They're kind of like syringe needles.
Right.
And
In fact,
yeah.
they're trying to engineer syringe needles. They've looked at the porcupine quill. Apparently, it goes in very easily, and then it doesn't come out very easily. It like has some sort of barbs on it. Or
It's like a dog penis.
Yeah.
What? How do I know that?
I don't want to know.
Exactly. A rat can tread water for 3 days.
How long can a cockroach live without its head?
Oh, weeks.
And what does it die of?
Dehydration.
Yeah.
Right
It
on.
doesn't die off of not having a head. It just starves to
What
death.
I want to know is who are these
'Cause it
people
can't eat.
drowning giraffes
Yeah.
and trying to drown porcupines and trying to drown rats? Someone's
Yeah,
out there.
cutting off cockroach heads.
Yeah, we got to catch this guy.
Yeah. Evil scientists.
I think it's a humanities professor who just wants to be a scientist.
So, okay. Someone's misunderstood the fundamental meaning of science.
I'll give you another fun fact before we go on to today's topic. Do you know that there's probably 200 times more gold in the ocean that's ever been mined in human history?
200 times more gold in the ocean. Yeah, that makes sense to me because 70% of the Earth's
Right.
surface is underwater.
So you ever stop and wonder why we care about gold at all?
Marketing,
That's true for most things, but there's something special about three things that are special about gold.
it does not.
Every society in the
Oxidize.
history of humankind has valued gold.
Yeah, because it doesn't age. It doesn't,
That's the first very key one. It does not
it's
oxidize.
malleable, so you can
Malleable?
make jewelry
Absolutely.
out of it. and stuff like
And the
that.
third one?
And it's hard to get. So
You are so good at this. That is exactly right. Now, there's a fourth reason that
it's
popped up.
like me. That's how I was so
You're pretty
successful
easy
in
to
dating.
get.
I was
You're
hard to
pretty-
get. I'm
you're
malleable.
very easy to get. Sorry.
And what was the first one? Oh, I don't age.
There's a fourth reason that also applies to you, and
yes.
that is it conducts electricity well.
That's how you can get me to dance.
And I often
It's
do.
also ductile.
You got me thinking about
come up with some sort of
ductiles now.
pun, yeah.
Yeah, about how to decorate
Avian
my new
floor
bathroom
covering.
with ductiles.
Yeah, right.
All right, so our topic for today,
God, let's get on to it.
yes, please, is given to us by a listener again. We have so many listeners.
Good.
Mary Ellen sends us a suggestion.
I like
on
double barrel names, by the way. Yeah,
double barrel names,
yeah, like Mary Ellen, two names together.
like Ray Watt,
Grey ham.
Graham. Ooh, that sounds disgusting.
Didn't we just have that at the diner?
We did. Mary Ellen sends us a link, actually, to a Scientific American blog
Right.
that asks the question, do we actually have free will from a scientific perspective?
Right.
So what do you think, Graham? Do we have free will?
I choose not to answer this question.
You have no choice because you have no free will.
Okay. In some universe right now, one of me is answering this question. In another
You
universe,
jumped right
I
to
am
the quantum
not
answer,
answering this
didn't you?
question. Yes.
There are lots of ways to think about this. There's philosophical ways, there's mathematical ways, there's physics ways,
Sociological? Yeah.
and psychological.
Yes.
Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's go for the science one, the quantum one.
Okay, so let's begin with Newtonian physics.
Yeah.
So Newtonian physics, as the listener I'm sure knows, is all about predicting outcomes of things. And if I know my initial conditions,
Right.
I have Newtonian equations that tell me force and inertia and movement. And so if I knew the initial conditions of the universe 6 billion years ago, then I should be able to predict where everything is now today.
You should be able
I should be able to. And that includes the atoms of my body, that includes the electrons in my brain, everything.
Wait, does it though? I thought once you get below a certain
Okay,
level,
okay.
then
So
Newtonian
this is-
physics no longer applies.
Well, that's Newtonian physics. So for the longest time, people thought, of course, the universe must be deterministic. If we have all the information, we have a perfect and completely modelable universe.
Do you know what's behind that explanation?
No, what do you
It's
mean?
a belief in God.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to there as well.
All right.
Now, as you know, Newtonian physics gave way to Einsteinian physics and quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics tells us that there is uncertainty, that we can never know where something is or where it's going, both within perfect amount of accuracy. Therefore, there's no such thing as determinism because we can never predict outcomes.
Does quantum mechanics also tell us that in observing something we actually change its outcome, or is that?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. There are essentially 4 possible ways to think about this. First is determinism is true, therefore all our actions are predictable and there's no such free will. In fact, free will is an illusion. The second is determinism is true, but we can still have free will.
Right. So the first one, if determinism is completely true, from the moment of the Big Bang, everything was already set into motion. We're just all following whatever.
Yes. We were destined to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And the second says determinism is true, but we still have free will. So yes, things were in motion, but because I can't predict precisely what's happening, there is some leeway here for me to make decisions. But the outcomes are going to be the same.
Now, isn't there another explanation that kind of mixes those two together?
Yes, we'll get there. So the third outcome is determinism is false. There is built-in randomness. Therefore, there is no possible prediction of outcome, and we must choose every path we take. And the fourth is determinism is false, but we still don't have free will because things happen so randomly that nothing can ever be achieved by choice, by decision-making. Those are essentially the 4 possible explanations.
What about the models that says every time something has a choice of going this way or that way, a new universe is created to
so that's
accommodate those
the
two
multiverse
possibilities.
Model. So the multiverse model essentially accommodates one of quantum mechanics' greatest mysteries, and that is, can a thing be 2 things at once? Is a light particle both a particle and a wave simultaneously? Is the cat both alive and dead when it's in Schrodinger's box? Because Schrodinger was that guy who kicked the giraffe into the pool. The multiverse theory goes that multiple universes arise to accommodate all possible outcomes. If that's true, if the multiverse is true, that means there is no free will.
Yes, or there's an illusion of free will.
There's an illusion of free will, because every single possible outcome exists.
Is there, and so we think that we've chosen.
But we haven't really.
Or maybe we have chosen, and in choosing, we've created another universe. Maybe we're all creators of universes all the time.
That's heavy, man.
Yeah.
There's a cartoon superhero movie, the Justice League movie, where they go to another universe and they meet their parallel superheroes and they're fighting, and the evil villain Owlman, yes, Owlman, is attempting to destroy all the universes that there are because he reasons it's the only thing that has value. The destruction of all the universes is the only true act of free will.
Free will. Wow. Serious owl.
See, comic books can be deep.
Was it a parliament of owlmen? So that's the scientific explanation.
That's the physics explanation. There's a neuroscience aspect as well.
Yeah, the physics explanation doesn't really get at what we call free will, which is can we make a choice here or now in our lives to do something or not do something, right? So the only way that can be subsumed under physics is if you reduce consciousness to the sum total of all the positions and velocities of particles that are in us right now, and that has either been predestined or not. If we set that aside, I like using that all the time. If we set that aside,
if we posit,
if we posit a setting aside that maybe largely deterministic forces are in effect in the universe, but when it comes down to consciousness and our individual choice of how to act, maybe that's not determined. I think most people are comfortable, I think, with that model.
Is comfort really important here?
But then we have to interrogate, do we really have choices in our consciousness? Or are those two somehow determined?
There have been a lot of studies in the neurology realm to determine whether or not we actually are making choices.
Right.
And what they seem to conclude is that free will is an illusion in the sense that your brain decides first and you become aware of that decision later. So there's something called readiness potential. They put people in brain scanning, brain imaging machines, and they look at which parts of the brains light up. And they ask them things like, you're going to choose which direction you're going to move this cursor, left or right. The scientists can predict what the subject is going to say seconds before they say it.
Seconds.
Seconds.
That's a long time.
Yeah, because their brains have already made the decision based upon what sections are lining up, and their consciousness is not yet aware of the decision.
Yeah, it's catching up because all the higher cortex stuff is slower than the rest of it.
So the question now comes: are we truly making decisions, or are there built-in neurological algorithms making decisions for us?
Yes.
And we have the illusion of having control over those algorithms.
Well, it depends on what sort of decisions you're talking about.
That's true.
So immediate, like negotiating the world decisions, I would agree that there's probably a lot of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, lower brain decisions that we become aware of only later. But if you sit down and think, should I buy a house or not? It's not your lower brain. I think that's going to make that decision ultimately. I mean, it might feed into it, but I think your higher cortex, I'm not using the right word, but your judgment plays a
so there are micro
factor.
and macro decisions here that are operating in different paradigms and different. Okay, possible. That's interesting. Is it not curious though that so much of even the micro decisions, or the macro decisions rather, are a sum total of micro decisions, are they not? Whether or not you buy a house, it's like whether or not do I feel rich, do I feel confident in my relationship, do all these other things. So these are micro decisions that are active.
This is where I think sociology comes into to play.
There's a role for sociology and science.
I don't know whether he calls himself a sociologist or an ethnographer or an anthropologist named Pierre Bourdieu. I think he passed away. Bourdieu, who looked at traditional anthropology and at studies of societies. And traditional anthropologists like to come up with kind of rules. As in this society, they worship these gods and they do this during the ritual, and they would describe it and often had charts and all sorts of stuff. He realized that didn't capture what was actually going on in terms of actual practice. So if you go in and people will tell you, yes, we make this temple with these two doors because of this, this, and this. But when you actually observe their behavior, they're not doing that. And so when you ask someone, why do you do something? Why do you make these choices? They'll come up with an explanation, which they may believe, or they may be coming up with it in order to satisfy your question. But actual practice is different from that. A lot of what he calls this synoptic illusion, from making a synopsis of something, as anthropologists and other sort of sociologists like to do. There's an illusion created because often it erases the variable of time. So, for example, gift giving. You can have a rule that says, okay, if you give me a gift, I have to give you a gift in return, or I lose face, blah, 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 blah. But if you give me a gift and I say, oh, wait, 1 second, and I pull out a gift and give it right back to you, that's not a proper gift giving, right? That's just like a naked erasing of the debt, right? So that some time has to pass. And then later I give you a gift, and it has to look like it wasn't just in reciprocation for that gift you gave me. So you have to take time into account. So there are all these things that are. So he tried to come up with a more complicated idea of how decisions are made in the world. And the way he did that was by coining a term, or not coining, but redefining a term, habitus, Habitus. And habitus is the condition in which we live in. We are predisposed to certain types of choices, and the environment that we grow up in predisposes us to those choices, but then our actions and our choices become part of that environment. So it's like a feedback. But what we view as objective reality and our objective choices are often internalized artifacts of a habitus, which means we were born into a certain social class, into a certain part of the world, and to a certain family, and we've been conditioned to see the world a certain way. So some people might not think of buying a house at all, right? That they just think that's not in their choices are not about whether to buy a home or not, right? Because of the free will exists, but it has very strict limitations on it.
All I keep thinking about is the people who adhere to this thinking are called Homo habitus.
Homo habitus.
Homo habitus. I just dumbed it down specifically, didn't I?
So in other words, there is no asking. It's not a binary yes or no, the free will question. It's as with many things that we talk about on this podcast, it's how you define your terms. It's what context are you talking about.
Because we refuse to take a stand on anything.
On anything, right? Yeah.
Well, the free will is fascinating for a number of reasons. All the ones you mentioned. Also, free will suggests a lack of causality.
Right.
So actions made today do not necessarily result in consequences later on. And we always assume that causality runs in one direction from cause to effect. There is some evidence in quantum studies that it runs backwards sometimes, that effect may precede cause.
Right.
And if that's the case, free will is really in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of famous studies around retrocausality. Retrocausality is the sense that reverse causality, that the effect precedes the cause. And there's a famous study that came out recently called Wheeler's Delayed Choice Gedanken Experiment with a Single Atom. Gedanken. And this was finally an empirical study that gives form and substance to a thought experiment that's several decades old. And the thought experiment has to do with the famous double slit experiment. And I'm sure our listener knows what that is. Double slit experiment is about you put a photon through a slit, temporarily becomes a waveform, and then manifests as either a particle or a wave at the other end of the slit. And if there are two slits or two filters, the question is, at what point does it decide to be a wave or a particle? Finally, this was able to be accomplished using lasers and a helium atom rather than photons.
Helium again. Another reason we should have helium.
We should have some helium, damn it. And what they found was that
call out to helium.
is the helium atom seems to know whether or not a filter awaits it at the other end of the experiment. So it's in a waveform. If the filter awaits it, it's in a particle form if it doesn't. So the question arises, how does it know, quote unquote, know? It's getting information from the future. And other similar experiments have arisen that suggest that at the quantum level, information from the future is filtering into the present to change quantum states. And if that's a reality, then we're suggesting causality is bi-directional at the very least. Then what the hell is free will? And
once again, though, I think we're conflating physical properties with mental.
Are we, though? I mean, what are mental properties other than a sum total of physical properties?
That's where I might...
So you're going to suggest that there's something called spirit or consciousness that's...
No, I'm just that... I don't know if gestalt is the right word, but the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That there's consciousness emerges out of a certain group of physical factors, but it cannot be reduced solely to those physical factors, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So there's something else, a plus whatever that comes out, that's what I don't think can be. That's where free will would live if it does exist.
That sounds vaguely like religion, my friend.
Does it? I don't know. A lot of religion is about erasing free will, isn't it?
That sounds vaguely like anarchism, my friend. Well, I think we've exhausted that subject pretty thoroughly. That's a
that subject could go
totally
different directions and ad infinitum. That's a real stoner subject too. We should do another podcast about that. We should actually match our topics with certain
drugs.
Yeah, certain. I was going to say
carcinogenics. Speaking of causality, right now we're on whiskey.
Narcotics, yes.
Can I throw some questions at you?
Yeah. First of all, I wanted to let you know that wombats
get out of here
poo cubes. Apparently, I don't know how that happens, but
now I'm visualizing a wombat anus.
It's like that Play-Doh, the Play-Doh thing when you're a kid.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is.
You can squeeze out the different shapes.
By the way, when you said Play-Doh, I immediately thought of the Greek philosopher Plato.
Oh, Play-Doh, yes.
Yeah, Plato pooped cubes as well. Wow.
Perfectly formed.
In dodecahedrons, actually. Didn't Plato have the idea?
In a cave.
Didn't Plato have the perfect shapes? There was the icosahedron, the square, the cube, the sphere, the dodecahedron.
I don't know what they all were.
They represented aspects
forms
of reality. The platonic forms, right. The dodecahedron was symbolized the cosmos. So it would be fantastic if his anus was dodecahedron shaped and pooped out.
Yeah, fantastic is one word for that.
So the wombat poops out cubes.
Yes. And what's the shelf life of honey?
Infinite.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yes, antibacterial. In fact, do you know how Alexander the Great's body was preserved?
In honey?
In honey, because when Alexander died, he was essentially pharaoh of Egypt. And by that point, Egyptian mummification practices had become quite advanced.
Right.
They weren't the wrapping in the...
Did they still pull the brains out of the nose?
I believe so. Yeah. But apparently he was placed in somehow a transparent sarcophagus. And I struggle to figure out how that was done before glass was invented.
Glass, yeah.
And filled with honey. Maybe it was some kind of like wet paper of some kind. And so his body was on display as his generals made plans. He would stand there encased in honey.
Sweet. So how old is the oldest honey they've discovered?
I'm assuming 4,000 years.
It says here 2,000 years. Okay. Egyptian honey.
And
they tasted it. It tasted delicious.
For a taste Alexander.
Why is it... so it's antibacterial. What about honey is antibacterial?
I don't know. It doesn't like bacteria.
And sugar lasts a long time too, right?
Yeah, same reason. Because sugar actually will suck out the cytoplasm from bacterial cells and cause them
So
to die.
should we be slathering our cuts with honey if I don't have any polysporin?
If you look at bottles of jam, right, the top layer is actually all bacteria. Very often, a good jam, because what happens is the bacteria land on it, and then the high sugar content sucks the cytoplasm out of the bacteria and kills them on the top layer.
Interesting. So it's bacteria corpses.
Yeah, pretty much
on the top. And apparently, dog saliva is antibacterial as well. I heard.
I don't know about that. I've read misleading things about that.
We do know it's cleaner than human saliva.
No.
What?
I don't think that's true either.
I've heard human saliva is disgusting.
I think it is, but dog bacteria isn't any better. It's just that
maybe they just eat.
They're okay with it. Their immune systems are better.
All right. So no more licking my wounds. Okay. Did we have another? Oh, you were gonna ask me something.
Okay, I got one.
Is this officially a Facts and Furious?
Sure, let's do it.
We forgot our theme music.
I'll run certain music later on. How long do you think the average lifespan of a dinosaur was? And I'll give you some options here. 1 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, 60.
Average lifespan average out over all the known species of dinosaurs?
For over 100 years. I mean, you asked the right question, because really,
I'm sure some are quite short-lived and some lived a long time.
Right? And it depends on a lot of factors. Now, there are some internet memes that suggest that dinosaurs lived over 100 years, and undoubtedly some of them probably did.
Right.
But it's going to vary. Depends.
How do they determine
That's
that?
a good question. My question
You're
to
talking
you
about
is,
things millions of years ago.
my question is, how do you think they did?
Because I know they have carbon dating and so forth, but that's for when the bone.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
How would you go about doing it?
Is it something with genes?
Nope.
No. I guess there would there be genes still?
Probably
Probably not.
I don't
right?
think so.
Yeah. So.
By the way, they could be wrong. This is all theory, right? So how
is
would
it
you
something
go
about sedimentary layers, stratification?
Not really. No.
That I've never thought. It seems like a simple question, but I have no way of.
Well, the obvious first way to do
determine
it is to think about who the dinosaurs' descendants are and look at how long they live.
So you're just extrapolating from that.
Sure. Okay. So if we have like crocodilians, we have birds. Birds don't live very long.
Right.
Crocodilians do live very long. Bird-hipped dinosaurs, they assume, were probably short-lived, but reptilian-hipped dinosaurs were longer-lived. That's the first way.
What's the word you're using? Hip?
Hipped, yeah, because we classify dinosaurs by the hip shape.
Okay.
That's one way. So looking at descendants. Is there another way?
All right. That way, I don't know if that holds. I mean, that's relative lifespan, sure. But, I'm assuming they're probably. I mean, what if there's an oxygen-rich atmosphere?
Yeah.
And they live shorter lives, right? Because they're breathing this rich oxygen.
That's a good point.
That's
a good point.
Something to do with nutrition. Is there anything like growth rings for bones? Can you look at bones?
Yeah, actually there is. Absolutely right.
Okay.
So looking at the rate of bone growth is a way to determine how much energy you're consuming throughout a lifespan.
Okay.
Now, it's entirely hand-waving.
Right.
So the larger dinosaurs, they're assuming, were longer lived because of the slower bone growth or something like that. And the last way is to measure metabolism.
But larger animals are often shorter lived. Larger dogs are much shorter lived than smaller dogs.
I could have that reversed.
Yeah. Okay.
And metabolism. So one way of looking at metabolism is looking at the spacing between footprints. How fast are they moving?
Right.
And then divide that by the estimated mass and so forth.
So there is really no way to directly
There's
observe.
No way.
Okay.
But that's how science works. Right?
Yeah.
It's all speculative science.
Right.
And the thing is, very often, it's proven to be correct. So we have cases of species that we thought were extinct for tens of millions of years, and then we find them alive today. The coelacanth being a good example. So coelacanth was thought to be extinct for millions of years. They're found to be alive off Indonesia. Okay. Now they're almost extinct again because people have fished them to death.
How do they compare to the fossilized remains?
Perfectly.
Wow.
So in fact, the biologists got almost everything correct.
That's kind of cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah.
Right? It shows that the way of thinking was actually right.
But then sometimes they get it completely wrong. Like there was an egg that was known as an ovoraptor.
Yeah.
Sorry, not egg, a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And then they realized, it was actually nesting. It was not trying to eat the eggs. It was trying to.
It was a nanny raptor.
Hatch them. Yeah.
So we're in the middle of a thunderstorm right now. Do you realize that men are struck by lightning 7 times more often than are women?
Than women? I did not know that.
By the way, I phrase that than are women. Right. Otherwise, the implication is that men are struck by lightning more often than they are struck by women.
Right.
Grammar, my friends.
So it's something about the Y chromosome, I think.
Really?
Yeah, producing a more direct link to the ground.
Wow.
No, I have no idea why that would be.
We're going to give you the Jenny McCarthy Award for best pseudoscience.
More iron in their blood. No. this is okay because men are in traditionally activities outdoors and
Exactly right.
climbing trees.
That's exactly
and stuff
right.
like that. Yeah.
It takes a humanities professor, of course, to get there quickly.
Yeah.
But I guarantee a lot of the science students will go straight for these pseudoscience
Really?
explanations.
Wow.
Something to do with, the water content that's greater in women's bodies, or whatever it might be. No, men are outside at least 7 times more often than women. That makes sense.
And men are stupid. They'll do stuff like play golf in a lightning storm.
Or podcast during a
Yeah,
thunderstorm.
that's right. With this big metal mic.
How many animals does an average wild lion kill every year?
Male or female?
Well, it's average, so I'm assuming it's both.
Because apparently the
women
male
kill more.
lions do tick all. They just sleep around.
Well, they do kill.
Well, occasionally. Yeah. They'll go kill a hyena or something, but they're mostly mate, and the female lions do most of the hunting. So
Right on.
not a bad life, I suppose.
So let's assume it's female then.
How many a week?
A year.
A year. I'm just going to throw out 80.
80. Interesting. It's actually 20.
Only 20?
Yeah, right?
I thought it'd be more than one a week.
Because they're all starving to death.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
And it's amazing because they probably kill fewer animals than your average, American hunter.
Yeah, I was going to say for this sort of well-honed, lethal predator, they're not killing too many animals.
So they're actually quite ecologically sustainable. How many earthquakes does the Earth experience every year, do you think? Is it 1 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, or more than 10,000?
I'm going to go for the highest number,
That's
more than
correct.
10,000.
50,000.
Yeah.
50,000
And also, what do you
earthquakes.
define as earthquake again at this point? Because
Well-
apparently in Oklahoma, they're fracking, and now there are all these earthquakes.
Right. But this data, I'm sure, counts
Thousands of
pre-fracking.
Yeah.
I mean, earthquake technically is when the tectonic plates rub against each other.
Oh, only that kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 50,000, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's a big place. And there are probably sort of a lot of underwater earthquakes we don't even know about. Which animal can run the longest distance?
Animal?
Yes.
Longest distance?
Yes.
The human.
The human being, that's right.
There's a theory that our forebears may have used that technique to exhaust our prey.
Right. You just keep on running them down. Yeah.
I don't really like
No,
that theory.
it's been proven that they can do that. Yeah.
They can do it. I don't see it as being
It's not a very
viable.
efficient way of hunting.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it is possible. I don't know why would we be the best runners of all the animals?
bipedal.
Long distance runners.
Bipedal aspect of it.
Okay. So it's just a side effect of our anatomical
Yeah.
makeup.
When viewed looking south on top of the solar ecliptic, the solar ecliptic is the fried egg that defines the solar system, right?
Yes.
The thing on the ecliptic. When looking down from the top,
Looking down from the top. Okay.
and we have to define a top,
Right.
solar north. What's the only planet to rotate clockwise?
The only planet to rotate clockwise. My first instinct was going to say Venus for some reason, but then I wanted to switch it to Mercury, so I'm going to say Mercury.
Venus.
Oh,
You
always go for the first
always go for the
instinct.
first thing.
I'm glad I said it out loud.
Now the question is why, and one of the theories is it was struck at some point by some large thing that caused it to have a
large
retrograde.
Wow,
rotation.
that must have been quite a. I'm surprised it didn't.
Destroy
If
it?
something, yeah, it destroyed.
Well, the Earth was struck by a large thing as well, about
Right.
5 billion years ago.
What is this thing? keep an eye out for it.
Hand of God. And when the Earth was struck, something special happened. Do you know what that special thing
When the
was?
Earth was struck, was an ocean formed, or was the moon formed?
The moon was
was
formed.
formed. Yes, and probably an ocean too, where the moon used to be. Okay, I got one for you.
Okay.
Should you be more afraid of a shark or a coconut?
Well, the obvious answer is a coconut.
Coconut, yeah.
Mostly
Why?
because I'm never going to the ocean ever.
Assuming you swim in the ocean
Okay.
quite frequently.
Well, a coconut.
You go on a beach and you swim
A
and you walk on
coconut
the beach.
is actively trying to fall on my head.
It's trying to.
Yeah.
Just like that light particle or helium particle.
It's
It
deterministic.
knows where it's going to go.
It has free will. Sharks do not actively hunt humans.
Right. Yeah, you're more likely to get hit by a coconut in your head and die.
Yeah.
Than get eaten by
I've
a
seen
shark.
Gilligan's Island.
In fact, you're actually more likely that a vending machine will fall on you than a shark.
A vending machine actually fell on a friend of mine.
Oh, no.
Who was trying to steal from
I was about to say you must have had his arm up.
Yes.
What was he after?
a chocolate bar, I guess.
A chocolate bar. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna wonder if it was worth it or not. Okay, one more for you.
Sure.
Mine are too easy, but anyway, they lead to fun discussions. Total weight of all ants on Earth or total weight of all humans on Earth? Which is greater?
Well, ants, you said?
Ants, yeah.
I've
Just
heard,
ants alone.
I've heard that it is ants.
Yes.
And that's the right answer.
That's the right answer, yeah.
And I struggle with that. And I heard that on the Ricky Gervais podcast of all things.
Okay.
So I to question the validity of the answer. No, hang on. More or less, the BBC podcast actually explored it.
Okay. They did.
And they said they're not sure if that's correct.
Right. Well, I don't see how you could estimate the ant population with any accuracy whatsoever.
Yeah, they actually questioned whether or not that was valid, if I remember correctly.
Right. Okay.
So, ixnay on the ant A.
On the ant A.
And here's a question that may be relevant for a future episode.
Okay.
But I'll lay it on you right now. That is, how many people in the world have your birthday?
My birthday.
Yes.
It's a lot more than 1 in 365. I know that.
Yeah.
Because I guess we cluster around birthdays. And I've heard that if you get, I don't know the number, either a dozen people or 20 people, maybe 20 people together, odds are greater than 50% that the two of them will have the same birthday. Mm-hmm. So how many people have my birthday? Let's go for 2% of the population. What's 2% of, what are we at now? 8 billion?
7 billion people?
7 billion. I'll let you do the math.
So what's a 50th of 7 billion?
Here we go.
300,000? 300 million?
My iPad doesn't have a calculator on it. What am I going to do? Okay. You said 350,000?
300 million, sorry.
300 million? Okay. 300 million, that's my answer.
Okay. Well, actually, it's actually 100 million.
100. So we weren't too far off, actually.
That's pretty good.
Right magnitude.
Yeah.
Right order of magnitude.
So we should do an episode one day on, statistical anomalies and how they're computed.
Like you.
Like you?
You're a statistical
me?
anomaly. Yeah.
I thought you meant like, okay, right. I thought female sheep. All right. Well, on that note, I'm Monkey Ray.
And Monkey Graham.
Oop oop.
Signing off.
Woo.